I dropped a video or I dropped a clip, and the clip, I believe I dropped it yesterday, was from a live stream that I did earlier in the week where I basically said, pay off your home. Pay off your home. Now, I know that there's a lot of financial advice that goes out throughout the industry where different people is giving you different advice and they saying different things depending on whatever it is that you're listening to and what your objective is, right? But I always advocate for people. Shout out to Rita. I'm gonna be reading that super chat shortly. Um, I always get information, and I always say for you to pay off your home. I always say for you to pay off your home. As a regular everyday consumer, I think you should pay off your home. Now, of course, you're going to have some caveats in there where there's people that make money from real estate or they leverage the banks in order to continue to grow or scale faster, or they make a significant amount of money in order to do this. And then you're going to have other people that's mom and pop people that basically is getting inside of the real estate game. And so they're going to always use the narrative that somebody else taught them. And they're going to say, hey, leverage other people's money. And then I would read, comments in the chat and they say, well, billionaires always leverage other people's money. Listen, man, there's rules to this game and you got to understand where you stand in a hierarchy of things. For the overwhelming majority of Americans, you giving money over into the bank in the form of interest because you are financing your home, and a lot of people, let's also add the caveat in there, that a lot of people buy more home than they need or than they can afford, which is one of the reasons why they want to stretch the payments out much longer, right? A lot of people, for the majority of Americans, you do not want to give free money over into the bank. And you have to ask yourself the question, why am I trying to use their money when they're the ones that's benefiting as a result of giving me their money? Why are they so gung-ho about giving me their money and then incentivizing me to continue to play the credit game in order to continue to try to build wealth or buy a home and all of this stuff? Where is the bank benefiting? And that's what I always, go back to when I'm trying to have a conversation or I'm trying to understand something specifically. I want to know how you benefiting from it. How are you making money from it? Why do I have the middleman between you if I have the resources to eventually hurry up and pay my home off faster, right? The normal conversation or the narrative that's going to be pitched to you, which that doesn't apply to majority of people either, but the narrative that's going to be pitched to you is this. Well, Anton, why would I pay off my home when I can get more interest or get a bigger return on whatever it is that I'm investing in if I just invest in the market, right? Okay, we can have that conversation. And again, let me emphasize this by saying that we're speaking to the overwhelming majority of people that are trying to finance a home. That means that A, you have to have that lump sum of money, and then B, you have to be beating whatever it is, the rate that you're paying in interest over into the bank or whoever it is that's financing your mortgage. And then somebody will say to me, Anton, that doesn't make sense. I can just go and get tenants and have the tenants pay off my mortgage. Well, why would I want the tenants to pay the bank when they can just pay me? And then I can leverage the money and the resources to acquire more assets or to reinvest back into the business or do whatever it is that I want to do with it. Why would I have them paying the bank because it's still coming out of my money, considering that I have to pay the interest and they just paying a little bit of the principal, especially when you first finance a home? Why would I want them to pay the bank when they can just pay me? I don't understand the logic behind it. And maybe it's just because I'm a C student. I'm open to the fact that I'm wrong. But for the majority of people that are purchasing a home, why would you want to finance it longer than you have to? Because the narrative is always going to be, well, I can make a bigger return on my money. Well, first of all, that would mean that you're some sort of a seasoned investor and that you can regularly beat whatever the interest rate is that you're paying on your mortgage. Because people that are financing homes today, they financing it for 6 and 7.5% and so on and so forth, right? I don't understand the logic. Why wouldn't I have them pay me, but I want them to pay the bank as a result of it? You're going to have the arguments about scale and growth and interest rates. But let me just tell you something, and this is just my personal opinion. Debt is the enemy of wealth. And of course, you're going to have the conversation and say, well, billionaires or certain millionaires, they continue to leverage the bank's money in order to do so. No, they leverage the bank's money in order to prevent themselves from having to pay more in taxes. It's a difference. It's not that billionaires have to leverage the bank's money in order to continue to finance stuff so that they can grow. That's not why they do it. They do it because it costs them more money in order to pay the taxes on whatever equity share that they'd have to divest themselves from in order to get into whatever property that they have, versus not having to pay taxes on money that you borrow that they can then leverage whatever asset that they have, whether it's the equity share that they have in a company or their net worth and whatever it is that they got happening over here. They're able to save a significant amount of money by financing it at a much cheaper rate than you would going into the bank and then financing it based off of whatever the Fed is raising rates to. You not them. I'm not them. It's levels and it's rules to the game. I'm not them. You not them. So it makes no sense for us to compare ourselves to billionaires when the rules of the game for them is much different than the rules of the game for us. You ain't leveraging your $1 billion worth of shares in whatever company that you founded in order to say, okay, I want to get this lower interest rate so that I can prevent myself from having to sell the shares of the equity in that company so that I have to give taxes over to the federal government and basically spending money in order to spend more money. They don't want to give the money over to the federal government. They're letting their money continue to multiply because of the equity stake in it, and they're not paying the tax implications that come along with that with whatever it is that they'd have to sell in order to do. All you got to do is take the example from Elon Musk a few years ago before he bought Twitter. When he had to sell some shares in Tesla, and he was the biggest, he paid the most taxes allegedly, right? Because we don't know what's going on. He paid the most taxes of anybody in the history of the United States of America in order to sell equity shares into that company because he ain't had no choice. He had met the threshold and he was basically divesting himself in those shares because he had to sell the equity portion in it. And then he wound up leveraging a little bit of that money in order to buy Twitter, and he didn't even put all of his own money into that. He financed the company along with other banks and stuff like that because he didn't want to pay more than he had to in taxes. It's rules to the game. You not them. You're not them. You cannot leverage an asset to get a much lower rate in which you're going to be getting more money than the rate of return that you can then take this lump sum of money and invest it in over here, and then be able to get the tax implications or prevent yourself from having to pay the taxes that this billionaire over here got to pay in order to sell his equity share into the company. That's why they do it. It's levels, it's rules to the game. And in order for us to get to the level, we need to understand why we doing what we doing instead of just referencing somebody else without getting the full context as to why they're making that investment or why they taking out that loan or why they don't want to sell an equity share into it or why they continue to buy things from a business perspective and the only purchases that they make outside of whatever it is that they purchasing from that home is from a business perspective because they don't want the tax implications and they want to lower what it is that they got to give to the federal government. That's the main reason why. They built the product that ultimately add value into people's lives, and then they're able to leverage whatever equity that they have inside of that company in order to get a much lower rate than you, and then prevent themselves from having to pay the same taxes. Stop comparing yourself to people and billionaires because that's not not yours, our situation. It never makes sense, no matter how you spin it, no matter how you try to finesse it, it'll never make sense to give more in interest over into anything to a bank when you can literally be paying yourself and then reinvesting it into whatever assets that you want to invest it in order to continue to grow your net worth and grow your empire. No matter how you flip it, no matter how you spin it, it's never going to make sense. The math for me personally is just not mathing. The math is just not mathing. When you reduce your personal expenses in order to continue to grow your assets, that's when you then become successful. And then you leverage those assets in order to build more assets. And then that's the thing that wind up taking care of your lifestyle. But all of this extra stuff that y'all got going on over there, you got to build it first. That's why I say you got to get a bigger shovel. And then some people say, well, Anton, for some people that didn't save for retirement, I read a comment and I responded to it this morning. They said, Anton, for some people that didn't save for retirement, you know, their house can be their biggest asset in order to keep them from going broke. Well, that's the whole reason why we tell you to invest earlier in your life, so that you can get a bigger snowball that compounds over time. And why I keep telling y'all to maximize what it is that you contributed into your 403b or your 401k or your Roth 401k, so that it continues to grow tax-free. The Roth 401k grows tax-free. The 401k, it'll give you the tax. You don't have to pay taxes on it until you start to draw from it, but it reduces your tax burden now. And so those are vehicles that you're incentivized in order to continue to get, and you get the match. It's free money if you get the match. You know what I'm saying? It's no reason why you should not be saving for retirement. The number one problem that we have, and the reason why we continue to have so many differing opinions by everybody that's in the same boat, is because nobody wants to live according to what they can truly afford. And we not having a real conversations about how much can you really afford when it comes to this thing over here. Should you be buying this amount of house? Should you be over here living there because you can't afford to live in California, family? You can't afford to buy a $400,000 house, because just because you stretch the payments out don't mean that you can afford it based off of what the payment is. You need to look at affordability based off of how it's really going to affect you long term and how much money you're going to give over into the bank. If you can finance it for 10 years, 15 years, maybe you don't need that much house, right? The true cost of maintaining that property is going to be exorbitant compared to you living over here. Maybe you shouldn't be in a space where you got to pay HOA fees and you're getting finessed on that type of time. Maybe you really can't afford the property taxes that come along with a $500,000 house. Maybe you need to be in a bracket of a $100,000 house, $200,000 house, until your assets can then substantiate whatever it is that your lifestyle is. But if we don't start having real conversations realistically about what you really going through and what I'm really going through, or what it is that we really need to build in order to continue to maintain this level of, or the lifestyle that we really want, it's a sacrifice that you have to make earlier in life. A sacrifice that you have to make earlier in life that allows for you to live the life that you want later on. That's it. Everybody want it now. You want it yesterday. Even when I coach people sometimes for the first time, they want it tomorrow. Hey, help me how I can get. Hey, ain't no magic pill. If you're trying to do it that way or that fast, then I'm sure it's a guru that you can go and find. I'm not a guru. All I can do is give you my own life experiences and then translate it, and then you take the meat, spit out the bones, and then compare it to whatever other information that you have, and then utilize it that way. But I don't have the magic pill for you to be able to scale it and grow it big. I went broke in 2008 after making a whole lot of money from my job in the recession. And then I had to grind and build it, but I never actually made the adjustment until I actually went broke. And then it was the aha moment. And then everything that I was learning up to that point, I started implementing it, because I realized that I had to do it a little bit differently, and I couldn't depend on whatever it was that I was doing for a living in order to be able to sustain my lifestyle. So we was willing to live for free for an extended period of time until my father passed in 2017. And then that's when we started spending money. I was willing to live for free all the way up through 2017 in order to continue to get to the spaces that I really wanted to be in. And then that's when I started spending money. Everything else that I bought, it literally appreciated over time. All of the watches, everything, it appreciated over time. So, we got to have real conversations. I know that people keep telling y'all, don't pay your house off and all of this other type of stuff. Look, man, if you can save up 20%, put it down so that you don't have to pay private mortgage insurance. Stay away from HOAs. Finance a house if you have to. It's nothing wrong with financing a house. Finance a house if you have to, for the least amount of time that you have to do it. Pay it off as fast as you possibly can. And then remove the amount of money that you got to give over into the finance companies, including the credit cards, the student loans, the house, everything. Debt is an enemy of wealth no matter how you spend it, for 99.9% of us. Let the 1% figure out what the 1% is doing once we get there. Learn what it is that they do. Make the adjustments so that when we get to their spaces, we can then leverage whatever that same information is that they have, because now we're in a different tax bracket. But until then, man, don't let these people try to convince you not to pay off your mortgage. You don't know what it feels like to not have a mortgage. I'm telling you. It may hurt to issue out that money or that lump sum or to make the sacrifice now, but I'm telling you, when all you got to pay is property taxes and insurance, it's different. It's different. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities. You move differently because you move in an abundance now, because you ain't worried about the possibility of having to fulfill this mortgage payment if anything was to ever happen to you if you get laid off. No matter what happens, you always have a roof over your head. No matter what happens, you will always have a roof over your head. You got somewhere to live. You got somewhere to stay. You're not worried about it. You're not moving under duress. You're not moving desperate to do things that you shouldn't do when you ain't got to worry about the fact that you got that mortgage payment. Now you're starting to move in abundance because you're looking at the possibilities and you're not moving based off of what if something happened to me. That's why everybody got a savings account. That's why it's so easy to sell people on a savings account instead of having a brokerage account, because they worried about their next 6 months. If anything happened to me, will I be able to bridge the gap until I find another job so that I can make my mortgage payment? When you remove all of those burdens and those debts, you can move a little bit more holistic as far as what's in the best interest of your family, because you're moving in abundance and you don't have the same things that's holding on to you or those rocks in your backpack as you continue to climb Mount Everest. It's just a different feeling when you don't have a mortgage. I'm telling you. And if you pay off your mortgage and you decide, you know what, Anton, you was wrong. Okay, well, go ahead and take out equity out of your property in order to get that money back, and then you can do whatever it is that you want to do. But until you actually get there, it's a different feeling. It's a completely different feeling. All right. So I just wanted to have that conversation really quickly for people that may disagree with me, and I'm okay with people disagree with me. That's why we have conversations.